Leo was an overpowered hero with infinite riz, but before he could become the ultimate harem king, he was betrayed by his own kind, and got killed. But being the Riz Lord, he was able to make the goddess fall in love with him, so she reincarnated him as a demon lord. As the story begins, it's the year 447, and a massive war unfolds between the demon lord Leo, and the 6 heroes, who are blessed with godly powers. Leo's skeleton warriors manage to defeat some human soldiers, but one of the heroes possesses the power to revive them. A giant dragon begins raining fire on his castle, and Leo realizes that his strongholds have fallen. This is his last line of defense, and suddenly, a gigantic tree-like creature appears, and Leo recognizes it as the great sage, Arkiel, who abandoned his dignity for God's power. With his anger swelling, he prepares to join the fight with his staff, but his loyal Fenrir general reminds him of his promise to the goddess of rebellion, so Leo accepts defeat to keep his oath. As his castle crumbles, Leo drops his staff, and vows to reincarnate in 1,000 years to reclaim his throne. 1,000 years later, we see 2 girls, Celia and Regina, who are exploring the ruins of Leo's castle searching for signs of void monsters building nests. As they approach a massive door, they see some writings on it, and Celia took a picture of it. She is trying to figure out what it means, while Regina decides to search down the other way. When Celia touches the writings, the door opens, and inside she finds a giant crystal. Her radar limiter broke, and she saw a person trapped inside. The scene cuts to the past, where Leo meets Rosalia, the goddess who reincarnated him. She told him that 1,000 years from now, she will be in her child form, and disappeared before his eyes. At the same time, Celia tried to free Leo, who was trapped inside the crystal, but he thought that she was robbing him, so he destroyed the crystal. When Leo saw the girl, he thought that she was the hottest girl he had ever seen, and when she woke up she wondered why a child was prisoned inside the crystal. Leo realized that he was back in his child form when he was a hero, and Celia hugged him, mentioning that she will take care of him. Leo thinks that she is disrespecting the demon lord, but he still likes being suffocated by her huge assets, and loses consciousness. Later, we see Celia offering him cookies, while Leo realizes that his body was pathetic because he easily fainted due to hunger, and couldn't believe he liked the way she disrespected him, but since she has shared him her food, he thinks that he owes her his life. After that, Celia introduces herself, and mentions that she is the member of 18th Platoon at the Excalibur Academy. Leo told her his name, and mentions that he's 10 years old. She thinks that his name is adorable, and Leo realizes that nobody is aware of the past demon lord. She asks him if he was kidnapped by the voids, and Leo doesn't know what voids are, so she thinks that he has amnesia. Meanwhile, we see that Regina's radar has maxed out, and she takes out her holy sword that looks like an alien gun. We then see Celia explaining to Leo about voids, which are the enemies of humanity that appeared 64 years ago, and it's believed that they got isekai'd here from another world. Leo finds her explanation useless, and realizes that he has yet to ask her the most crucial question. He asks her about the current year of the Holy God calendar, which according to his estimate should be 1447, but she replies that it's year 64 of the unified human calendar, and Leo is surprised. Just then, the earth began to quake, and Celia tried to protect him, while Leo couldn't understand the emotions he's feeling towards her. A void breaks through the wall, and Celia shoots it with her weapon, but it has no effect. She realizes that it's an ogre class, while Leo decides to show them his power, but he tripped, and fell flat on his face. Just then, Regina arrives, and cuts off the void's hand with her weapon. She then transforms her weapon, and shoots it at the void, but it can still stand up. Regina tells Celia that she can handle it, and asks her to run toward the exit. Celia takes Leo along, and Leo realizes that nothing is going according to his plan, so he decides to hide his identity as Demon Lord to gain more knowledge on this world. As they were about to reach the exit, a crystal fell down, and another void showed up. Celia was shocked to see that it was a wyvern class, and asked Leo to run away, while she confronted the void. Leo tries to cast his magic to kill the void, but before he could complete the spell, Celia pushed him away to save him from Void's attack, and took the lethal blow. Just then 2 other voids appeared, and she apologized for not being able to protect him and passed away. He has a flashback when he died, and the goddess revived him. The voids try to attack him, but they are unable to break his barrier. He had taken a liking to Celia, so he decided to kill the voids. He uses his magic to crush and burn them into crisp, but notices that the bones still remain, and realizes that in his new body he could use only 1/3 of his power. He looked at Celia's body. Even though human life didn't matter to him, he decided to save her because she risked her life to save him. He casted a resurrection spell, and a mark appeared on Celia's leg. She begins to heal with fangs forming in her mouth, and he wonders if she will hate him for what he did to her, but thinks that it's better than letting her die. Meanwhile, Regina defeats the last void, and tries to contact Celia. Leo hears Regina's voice through her comms, and is amazed at how humans have developed incredibly advanced technologies over time. Celia wakes up, and hugs Leo for being safe, but is shocked to see that she's still alive. He tells her that he saved her using his sorcery, but Celia doesn't understand it, and asks if it was his holy sword. He decides to play along, and Celia explains that holy swords are an ability that appeared in humans in order to fight the voids. The majority of the abilities took the shape of weapons, so people began calling them holy swords, but they still don't know exactly how it works. Regina is a holy sword user, but Celia is yet to be blessed with a holy sword. Just then, Regina appears, and they wonder what happened to the voids. Leo plays dumb, and mentions that he was shaking, but when he got up they were gone. After that, Celia asked him to come with them, and he decided to go with them. Regina introduced herself as Celia's maid, but his gaze was fixed on her giant assets, and she thinks that this kid is unusually lewd for his age. Celia asks Regina not to tease her as he has lost all his memories. Regina then mentions that a good shock can bring his memories back, and lifts her skirt up. Leo can't believe that a demon lord like him is being ridiculed by a girl, but he's more surprised that his new body liked it. As they get closer to the base, Celia mentions that this is the humanity's last stronghold called the 7th Assault Garden, and it finally hits Leo that he's 1,000 years in the future. The story goes back in time by 6 years, and voids came through a dimensional gate, attacking the 3rd Assault Garden. The Holy Knights are fighting the voids, and some people are kept safe in a shelter. Celia and Regina are also there, and Regina is scared hearing all the cannon fire outside. Celia assures Regina that her parents along with all the other knights would never lose the battle. As the shelter began to quake, she told Regina that she would protect everyone once she got her holy sword. Later, the explosion stopped, and when they came out, they found out that all the holy swordsmen were eliminated. Celia can't believe this, and apologizes to Regina for lying to her. The scene then cuts back to the present, and as they enter the 7th Assault Garden, Leo is surprised that this whole place is a massive stronghold. After reaching, Leo is amazed that humans built this massive island, but Regina mentions that it's called a mega float, and it's also able to travel across oceans to protect humans all over the world. Celia informs her superiors that they have rescued a young refugee boy, and he possesses one of the holy swords. Regina is surprised that Leo has already awakened his holy sword, and Celia mentions that he used his power to heal her. Leo wonders why they call him a refugee, and they tell him that it referred to people who lost their homes to void. Celia mentions that it's also part of their mission to rescue refugees, as they need more people with abilities to fight against voids. Regina then decides to leave as she has some shopping to do, and Celia informs Leo that all outsiders must undergo an examination. She guides him through an entrance, and mentions that she'll be waiting at the exit. Before going through the door, Leo goes to the bathroom, and he is angry, as his plan was to rebuild his demonic army and bring humanity to its knees, but he didn't expect the humans to advance without limits. On top of it there are also those void monsters, and he's in the body of a child. He calls his minions, Blackus and Sherry. Blackus wondered why he looked like a child, and Sherry thought that this was his most adorable form. He mentions that his reincarnation ritual didn't go as planned, and he ended up in his human form from the old days. He asks them to investigate this place, while he will be infiltrating the military education facility. Sherry is a bit disappointed as she wanted to be the one to take care of him while he is in his cute new form. Afterwards, as Leo entered the door, pipes came and blew a mysterious wind on him, and after going through a scan, he walked forward. In the next room, a limiter tried measuring his mana, and began going off, so he suppressed his mana, and was able to move forward. Finally, he received his card, and when he looked at it, Celia came from behind. She took a picture of the card, and said she has everything ready to register his abilities of Holy Sword. Since Leo didn't have a Holy Sword, he decides to improvise and fool them. Celia then decides to give him a quick tour of the Excalibur Academy before heading to the dorms. On the way, Leo mentions that the place looks quite peaceful despite being on the front lines, and Celia mentions that only the Holy Swordsmen get dispatched on the front lines, so they have prevented voids from direct invasion. Celia then shows him the central command tower of Excalibur Academy, and she mentions that all military affairs are handled there. Leo thinks that this building is far bigger than his castle Deathhold. Celia then shows him the other facilities around Excalibur Academy, and mentions that there are still many more facilities in the academy including a bathhouse and a dance hall. Leo wonders what purpose do those facilities have, and Celia explains that holy swords are weapons that are brought out by person's emotions, and the swordsmen can't use their full power if they are depressed. Celia suddenly collapsed, but she told him that she was fine. She just needs some rest, and needs to get back to training to bring out her holy sword as soon as possible. While walking around, one of the girls thinks that he's cute, while the other mentions that he will grow up to be a demon lord in the bed, and Leo wondered if she knew he was the demon lord, but thought it was just a coincidence. Just then, a guy named Musel Rhodes appeared, and made fun of Celia for babysitting, but she told him that he was already a holy swordsman. Rhodes thought she was joking, and Leo decides to overlook his behavior as he's trying to keep a low profile. Rhodes invites Celia to join his harem, so she would never have to risk her life as she hasn't manifested her holy sword. Leo thinks that the other girls must be controlled by his holy sword ability, and he just wants to do the same to Celia as he's lusting after her body. They try to leave, but Rhodes grabs Celia by her hair. Leo has finally had enough of this D-bag, so he uses his magic to bring him down on his knees, and warns him never to lay a finger on her hair ever again. Rhodes tried to activate his holy sword, but just then a girl with orbs around her appeared. She reminds him that using holy swords for personal fights is prohibited, and threatens to report him to the Administration Bureau. Rhodes left with his girls, and Leo was glad that he didn't have to take any action. Celia thanks her, and the girl introduces herself to Leo as Elphine Fillet. She's a member of Celia's platoon, and in charge of data analysis. She records his size for uniform, and Leo is amazed about the different types of holy swords. Celia told her that Leo is the kid with the holy sword, and he used it to heal her. As they talked, Celia felt unwell, and Leo knows why. Later, they reached the dorm, and he wondered why it looked so old compared to others. She told him that the living quarters they get assigned depends on their platoon's achievement, and the entire academy is run on a merit-based system. They visit Regina's room, but she's already asleep. On reaching their room, Leo wonders if it's fine to be in a female dorm, and Celia mentions it's fine since he's just a child. She then began undressing herself, and asked him to go take a bath. While he's in the bath, he's amazed by the hot shower, and uses soap to wash his hair. Just then Celia enters the bathroom, and he's shocked by this unexpected plot development. She tells him that he needs to use shampoo to wash his hair, and she will help him like a big sis. She then asks him if he would join their platoon, as she hasn't manifested her holy sword, and they are the worst platoon of all. Leo asks her why she continued fighting when she was still weak, and should be the one who needs protection, but Celia is against this idea. Suddenly, she feels weak, and can't move her body. Leo activates his mark on her, and she gets up, sucking on his blood. She wonders what she just did, and Leo tells her that he's been lying about his holy sword. He tells her that he doesn't have the power to bring someone back to life, and mentions that the person named Celia is dead. The scene then shifts to 2 years in the past, where Celia is training hard to manifest her holy sword. Rhodes appears, and asks her to join her platoon, but she refuses. He tries to persuade her, but just then Regina comes to her rescue, and Celia wonders if she will ever be able to get her holy sword. Back in the present, we see that Celia is waking up in her bed, and wonders how he got her to the bed. She asked him who he really was, and he told her that he was the reincarnation of an ancient sorcerer, who can use magic instead of holy swords. To bring her back from the dead, he used his most powerful level 10 spell called Create Elder Undead, and made her the highest-ranking vampire queen in this world. Celia then shares her past about the Void attack when she was 9, which killed all of her family, and later they were taken in by the Excalibur Academy. She wonders if she'll ever get a holy sword since she is not alive anymore. Leo is not sure about it, but mentions that she'll be far stronger than she ever was. Just then, his stomach growled, and later we saw them in the cafeteria. Celia wondered if she could still eat food, and Leo told her that she could, but eating food was the slowest way for her to regain her mana. When she asked him what he would be eating, he told her that he would just eat a pastry. However, Celia said that he'd end up malnourished if he didn't eat better, while Leo thinks it's hilarious coming from an undead, crushing her emotions. He apologized, and asked her to pick food for him. He intends to pay it using his gold coin, but Celia mentions that her country only accepts credits as payment, so all his gold was worthless. Just then, we see 2 guys who are asking a girl to give her clothes as collateral for the money she owes them, but she knocks them away with her wooden sword, telling them that they can come back to collect the money next week. We then learn that the girl's name is Tsukai, and she has lost all of her money by gambling in a casino. Celia tells Leo that she's the vanguard attacker of their platoon, and has slayed several voids on her own. Celia introduces Leo to her, and they have lunch together. Leo noticed that her uniform was different from the rest, and Tsukai revealed that it was the traditional outfit from her homeland, and it's a memento of her older sister. Her village clan was killed by the voids, and since then she has dedicated herself to killing those creatures. Just then, her friends came asking for the money she borrowed, but she tells them that she will return it next week, and Celia mentions that this is the reason she keeps failing her exams. After that, we see an instructor, Diglas Alto, who will conduct Leo's inquiry, and she will determine the ability of his holy sword. Once he summoned his demon lord staff, she wondered what type it would be. He mentioned that it's a support type ability, and then proceeds to destroy all the robot simulators. Alto is shocked by his abilities, and Leo wonders if he went too far. Alto didn't believe that he was just a support type, and everyone from outside came to see the destruction he created. Alto thinks that this requires a thorough investigation, and prepares for alternate simulators, but just then Rhodes appears volunteering to handle the inquiry. Since he's one of the top holy swordsmen, he has the qualification to test him, and prepares to fight him with his slave girls. Celia thinks it's an unfair fight, but Rhodes mentioned that this was one of his abilities, so he wasn't doing anything against the rules. Leo agreed to fight all 5 of them alone, and Celia said that she'd be backing up Leo since she's his guardian. Rhodes accepts under the condition that if they were to lose, Celia will have to join his harem. Leo accepted, but in exchange, if Rhodes loses, he should never mess with Celia again. Rhodes accepts, and they prepare for the fight. As the fight began, Celia rushed forward, and attacked the girls. Leo realized that her skill had already increased since she became the vampire queen. While Celia was being attacked by two girls, Rhodes asked one of his other girls to attack Leo. The girl casted her lightning magic towards him, but he released the power of his shadows to prevent her from moving, and made her fall. Celia begins to overpower the other girls, and tells Rhodes to stop running behind girls like a coward. Meanwhile, Regina arrives at the training area, and is shocked to see the fight. Celia defeats the rest of the girls, and proceeds towards Rhodes. However, he uses his holy sword ability to freeze her in place. He begins to drag his stick all over her body, but thinks that he needed to finish Leo off first. Seeing that he was cornered by all five of them, Leo knew that he could still destroy them with a single blow, but just then Celia's strong determination to protect Leo caused her to awaken her holy sword. She breaks free from Rhodes' spell, and destroys his holy sword, which also frees the other girls from his mind control spell. Rhodes surrenders, and Regina runs to hug Celia, congratulating her for awakening her holy sword. Later, Celia thanked Leo for helping her, but he said that it's natural since she is one of his minions. She wonders what a minion is, and he tells her that minions protect their master. She smiled, and swore that she would always protect him as his big sis. She then requests him to make her stronger, and he agrees to it. Later, Regina threw a party to celebrate Celia's holy sword awakening. All of them joined, and they discussed naming her holy sword, but Celia mentions that she'll name it after she understands the true potential of her holy sword. Regina then mentions that Leo is now one of them, but they don't have any extra rooms available. All the girls offer him to stay with them, so that they can develop a plot with him, but Celia interrupts, and wants him to continue living in her room. Leo realizes that she would need to suck on his magical fluid so that she can keep living, so he decides to stay with her. Later, he visits Elphine, and is amazed at the ability of her orbs, which can collect, analyze and transmit data. She mentions that in her previous platoon, she was an attacker, but during one of the missions she lost two of her friends, and lost the original ability of her holy sword. She couldn't fight anymore, but Celia took her into their platoon. After that, her orbs completed his scanning, and it's reported that he was found ogling at her huge assets. Leo is shocked, wondering what kind of data she is collecting, but she was just joking. He sees a map on her computer, and wants to check it out, so she decides to lend him his spare tab. Later, while Celia was taking a bath, he uses the tab, and spots the location of his old castle. He notices that most of the void outbreaks occurred near the location of ancient battles, and thinks that this may be related. He calls out Blackus for more info, and learns that there was a large mana crystal placed under the island, which is being used by humans as a power plant. They are using their technology to use the crystal to distribute mana to the entire city, and Leo thinks of getting his hand on it. Blackus then leaves to continue investigating further, and just then Sherry appears, having bought him some donuts. He thinks it's tasty, and she shows him other food items, but what he needs is information. She tells him that as per her intel, no one remembers about the Demon Lord or about the war that happened 1,000 years ago. She then hears Celia taking a bath, and is a bit annoyed that Leo has turned her into one of his minions. He tells her that Celia has become a vampire queen, and with proper training she will become his right-hand man. As Celia comes out after her bath, Sherry leaves, and Leo's Excalibur is getting out of hand seeing her like that. Meanwhile, we see a few divers exploring under the ocean, but as soon as they saw the great sage's face, they got crushed by his vines. We are then shown the story from the year 432 of the Holy God calendar, where Leo is being guided by someone in the Seiken wasteland in order to help them kill gargoyles, who are terrorizing the town. As they reach, Leo doesn't see any gargoyles, and realizes that it's a trap. Suddenly, some mages appear and restrict his movements using their spell. Some men come there, and restrain him. Leo tries to get free, but the men stab him with their spears, and he eventually dies. After they leave, the goddess Rosalia appears, and she asks him if he hates those people who betrayed him. Leo doesn't hate them, and thinks that this doesn't really make them bad or evil. She plans to rebel against this world, and asks him what he thinks about it. Leo doesn't care about it, and she asks him to join her. He wonders why she invited him, and she tells him because she can only trust him, but that's not the only reason. Although she thinks that heroes are boring, she has fallen for his riz, and wants him to become hers. The scene cut back to the present, and we see Leo waking up in his bed. He thinks about his mission, which is to find Rosalia, and restore his demon army to its former glory, but just then he notices the bite marks on his neck. He asks Celia to wake up, and although Celia was in deep sleep she wakes up. Celia is surprised, and Leo tells her that the mark she has denotes his authority over her. He explains that he can force her to do anything, and she wonders if he'll force her to do some hardcore plot development. Leo being the Jigachad mentions that he would never do that, and Celia remembers that he behaved like a gentle person during their bath. He then confronts her about sucking on him last night, and she explains that she was desperate and couldn't wait any longer. Leo understands that it's difficult for her to control her urges at night, so he's fine with her sucking him dry, but mentions that she should give him a heads up next time. Just then she gets a call from Elphine, who informs her about a strategy meeting, and it's about the research team that went out on the marine survey. Celia then asks Leo to train her, as she doesn't have any classes today. Later, we see a meeting being held in 7th Assault Garden, and the acting commander, Castoros Nikio, is shocked to learn that all the research team end up dying. According to their report, they detected void activity, but it disappeared in 3 seconds. The divisional commander Gillian Cooper thinks that it may be a sensor malfunction as 3 seconds is way too fast, but the research team mentions that the sensors are working fine, and they also captured images that look like roots of a tree. They wonder if it's a mutated void or void lord, and the chairman, Vite Leon, mentions about a stampede, which caused a huge tragedy 6 years ago. He thinks that they should move the city ahead of time, but Gillian doesn't agree with this approach, and thinks that they shouldn't run away from voids. Just then, Castoros receives a call from the commander, and mentions that he told them that they shouldn't move the city now. The commander wants a follow-up investigation, and Gillian decides to take it up. The scene then cuts to Celia training, and she fights some training robots. Leo mentions that her technique is impressive, and she mentions that she learned it from her family when she was little, but has been self-taught ever since coming to the academy. Leo tells her that a vampire queen's true potential lies in her mana supply, and he will teach her sorcery one of these days. He then casts a barrier, and summons some of his lowest-ranked minions for Celia to fight. She keeps fighting them, and eventually gets tired. She thanks him for the training, and offers to treat him as thanks. Although he tries to refuse, his stomach growls. Later we see Sakuya returning back to the dorm, and sees Blackus. She's impressed by his looks, and thinks he may be a stray dog as he doesn't have a collar. She gives him some food, and names him Mr. Fluffy Wuffy Blackfur. Inside the dorm, she meets Regina and Elphine, and tells them about her encounter with Blackus. Regina wonders why Elphine is dressed in her school uniform on an off day, and she tells her that it's just a precaution when the teacher calls, as she has been tasked with gathering intel. After that we see Celia taking Leo on her ride, and he's impressed by human civilization. Meanwhile, Sherry has taken up a job in a restaurant, and the owner asks her to cut some potatoes. Sherry uses her skills to cut them in an instant, but also cuts down the utensils in the process. The owner is shocked, and asks her to do cleaning outside. Outside, Sherry sees Celia with Leo, and hides from them. Celia buys some donuts from the store, and Sherry wonders where they are going. Later they reach a restaurant called Sunny Spot House, and suddenly many children come rushing towards them. She tells Leo that this place is also home for these kids, and Leo realizes that they are also orphans just like him, but their lives are much different than his. They head inside, and as they talk, one of the kids flips her skirt. Leo is furious, and tries to teach him a lesson, but Celia mentions that he's just a little kid. Celia then introduces Leo to the owner, Frenia, and everyone is surprised that Leo is a holy swordsman. The kids think it's awesome, and they gather around him, which makes him uncomfortable. Celia then mentions that she has brought donuts for everyone, but Frenia mentions that they can have it at snack time. Leo realizes that this is a place that Celia wants to protect, and thinks that he doesn't have a place to protect as his castle was destroyed. The scene then cuts to the investigation team, and they notice that there's nothing at the specified location. Suddenly, the underground facility begins to shake. Elphine also detects the vibrations through her monitor, and Tsukai mentions that she's feeling uneasy. We then see some workers checking on the assault garden's food reserve, and they are shocked to see the room filled with vines. Meanwhile, Leo is enjoying his meal with Celia and the kids. The story then goes back in time to the year 428 of the Holy God calendar, and we see that some monsters are attacking a city in the Ragna's kingdom. We see Leo, who is now 12 years old, and is accompanied by two other heroes, Tiras Resurrectia and Arakiel Degradios. Arakiel plans to use his magic to kill the monsters along with the townspeople, and plans to revive the townspeople later. However, Leo is against this approach, and cancels Arakiel's magic with his sword. He then proceeds to kill the monsters on his own, and defeats all of them. The townspeople cheer for him, but Arakiel thinks that Leo is dangerous, and someday this power will dig his own grave. Back in the present, we see that the tree-like void has entered the assault garden. Meanwhile, in the control room, Castoros wonders how the void manages to disappear, and Gillian mentions that it must have crystallized, so they need to find it immediately and kill it. Diglis mentions that one of her students from 18th Platoon would like to share the results of her investigation, and she's a daughter of the Fillet family. They decide to hear her out, and they connect to Elphine. She informs them that a few minutes ago she detected microvibrations in the area beneath the assault garden, and she also noticed some disturbance in the magnetic field that caused mobile network outages. She concludes that there is a presence of void activity in the assault garden, and they are surprised that voids have infiltrated their facility. Their research team also mentions detecting the vibrations, and they are investigating the source. Gillian wonders how it managed to get in, and a member mentions that they might have slipped through the gaps like the contact points of the anchor chain's opening. Suddenly, an alarm starts to ring, and the research team detects minor damage in Block 31. They report that it's on the move again, while Vite wonders why the void isn't using magic. Elphine thinks that it's doing it intentionally so that it could sneak farther into the city, but Vite thinks voids are not that intelligent. Just then the alarm begins to ring again, and they receive a report that there are roots growing in the pantry. Back in Platoon 18 dorm, we see Regina is unable to contact Celia, and Elphine sends one of her drones to Celia. Regina wonders if voids have invaded the city, and Elphine hopes there aren't too many of them. Meanwhile, we learn that Sherry has disappeared from her work, and the owner is trying to contact her. Back at the restaurant, we see that the children are having lunch, and one of the kids asks Leo to show his holy sword. A girl named Tessera interferes, mentioning that they shouldn't bother him, and it looks like she has fallen for his riz as well. Back in the assault garden facility, we see some soldiers try to engage the void, but the video feeds get cut off. Gillian thinks that since there is only one void they can finish it off, while others try to make necessary preparations. The video feed gets restored, and they learn that the void has escaped. Elphine thinks that it's trying to access the power plant's massive energy reserves, which could result in a stampede. Castoros immediately orders to protect the power plant, and Gillian sends out his men there. The void then enters the power plant, and the defense system there activates. The soldiers and the defense machines start shooting the void. Meanwhile, Castoros decides to shift the assault garden into fortress mode, and evacuate the citizens into the shelter, while preparing the military for a stampede. Back at the restaurant, the kids are asking Leo to show them his holy sword, and Celia also asks him to give them a peek. Leo agrees, and mentions that he will treat them to a spectacular performance. He makes some of his tiny skeletons perform some tricks, and all the kids except for Tessera are disgusted seeing the skeletons. Meanwhile, we see soldiers are still struggling to stop the void, and it makes contact with the power plant. The city then goes on alert, and Celia notices that the assault garden is undergoing a mode shift. Leo wonders if those are all voids, and Celia is shocked to see that it's a stampede. Vite mentions that it will take 3 days for assistance to arrive, and wonders if they can hold that long, but Diglis is confident in the holy swordsman of their academy. We then see that Platoon 18 is somewhere in the city, and they wonder about Celia. The assault garden base starts shooting at the voids, and the Platoon 18 members also get ready to fight back. Leo is impressed by the capabilities of the assault garden weaponry, and just then Sherry reports him about the monster attacks. He asks Sherry to protect the Platoon 18 members, and she leaves. Celia then tries to guide the kids to the shelter, but Leo stops them due to voids being lurking outside. Celia then gets ready to fight the voids, and Leo realizes that she still hasn't awakened her true vampire queen powers. Seeing Celia's resolve to protect those kids, he decides to help her. Celia quickly attacks 2 voids, and kills them, but just then she notices the other 2 voids being burned down. Suddenly, more portals open, and higher-class voids start to appear. 3 ogre-class voids land near the Platoon 18 members, but Tsukai quickly attacks and kills them all. Just then more voids appear, and Regina takes it down. Elphine mentions that they cleared all the void in 300-meter radius, but they are shocked to see a Hydra-class void in the distance. Leo thinks that the mighty dragon races are also turned into voids, and realizes that normal spells won't be enough to kill it. He asks Celia to keep other voids busy while he casts a powerful spell, and wonders why he's protecting the humans, but thinks that he can't let anyone hurt his minions. He attacks the dragon with his spell, but the dragon gets back up. Just then, Blackus appears to help him out, and this gives him time to cast a level 10 spell which kills the dragon. Celia is surprised that he killed a mega colossal void on his own, but just then the ground below Celia starts to crack, and some vines grab her. Leo tries to rescue her, but just then the Void Lord comes out calling his name, and Leo realizes that it's Arakiel. The story then goes back in time to the year 434 of the Holy God calendar, where Leo returns to the capital of Necrozoa after a battle. Rosalia welcomes him back, and Leo mentions that he was victorious in the battle. He presents the spoils of the war to her, and she thanks him. She asks him to hold on to them for her, mentioning that Leo has become quite the demon lord. Leo mentions that he has developed a variety of powerful spells, and also made a new friend named Blackus Shadow Prince. Rosalia then proceeds to give him a gift in celebration for his victory, and she presents him with his sword, but the holy sword doesn't suit him anymore, so she changes it to a demon sword. She explains that the sword can only be drawn when a certain condition has been met, which Leo is already aware of, and the sword will challenge his true intentions. Back in the present, Leo notices that Arakiel is spawning more voids, and realizes that he's the one causing stampede. He then tries to attack Arakiel with his fire spell, but he flees underground. Leo checks the mark on his hand, and since it hasn't disappeared, he knows that Celia is still alive. Just then Blackus arrives, mentioning that their mortal enemy has returned, and Leo tells him that this time he's different, as he has become a Void Lord. Blackus wonders why the kids are outside the restaurant, and they are staring at them. Leo thinks that they must be scared of his powers, and asks them to wait inside. However, Tess thanks him for saving them, and asks him to go save Celia. Leo realizes that they aren't disgusted by him, and promises them to save Celia. He casts a level 8 barrier around the restaurant, and calls his elite warriors to stay as guards. As they are about to leave, Blackus shows him the food that Tsukai gave him, and shares it with Leo. Just then they hear a sound coming from Celia's communication device, and it's Elphine. She mentions their current battle situation with the Hydra, and asks Celia to get there soon. Leo informs her that Celia has been kidnapped, and he needs her to send Celia's location using her ability, so that he can get her back. Elphine is reluctant to send Leo alone, but when she sees the destruction that Leo has caused, she agrees. Elphine tracks Celia's location to sublevel 7, which is near the heart of the assault garden. Just then she's about to be attacked by the Hydra, but Sherry saves her without getting noticed, and Elphine wonders what happened. We then see Leo heading towards the power plant, riding on Blackus, who knows the location of the power plant. Blackus wonders about Sherry, and Leo mentions that he sent her to defend Celia's friends. Since she was once an assassin who tried to kill him, she should be able to deal with the monsters. Blackus mentions that it doesn't make any sense for him to do this, also he casted a protective barrier for those children's, and Leo admits that he has taken a liking to the humans. They finally reach the power plant, and he uses a fire spell on Arakiel, but it has no effect. Arakiel wonders how Leo is still alive, as he was supposed to be dead a millennium ago. Leo tells him that he never died, and just sealed away his soul. Arakiel mentions that the world has changed, and this world shall be rebuilt along with the empty star. Leo wonders what he is talking about, and Arakiel mentions that he has been chosen as the bringer of good news. Arakiel then manifests some life forms in his branches, and Leo realizes that these are the priests that he collected from the sacred order. We then see Celia hearing Leo's voice through her comms, but she's all tied up. Leo then attacks Arakiel with Blackus, but their attacks prove to be ineffective. Blackus notices that they are running out of magic, and Leo realizes that Arakiel is draining their mana, as this entire area is his domain. Arakiel then uses his level 8 magic to attack them, and injures Leo. He attacks Arakiel, but he uses a barrier to defend himself. Arakiel casts the level 8 spell again, and Leo realizes that he has unlimited magic power, as he is using the mana crystal. Meanwhile, Celia is desperate to help Leo, and manifests her holy sword. Leo along with Blackus engaged in battle with Arakiel, and Celia tries to break free from Arakiel's vines. Leo sees her location, and hits her with the comms which is infused with his blood. This makes Celia manifest blood wings, and she breaks free. Blackus is out of mana, so he decides to get some rest. Leo reunites with Celia, and she thanks him for his help. Arakiel then begins to cast multiple level 10 spells, which could bring down the entire city, and Leo asks Celia to buy him some time, so that he could take him down. She uses blades made from her blood to attack Arakiel to cover him, and Leo prepares to draw the demon sword. He declares the condition to draw the sword is to protect his kingdom, and claims that all who reside here will become his subjects, so it's his duty to protect them. He then wields the demon sword named Dainsleif, and Blackus is surprised that the demon sword acknowledged Leo's decision. Leo then uses a sword technique called Ragna Lost and defeats Arakiel. After this, new voids stop appearing, and the remaining are taken care of by the Assault Garden forces. The research team confirms the disappearance of the Void Lord, and mentions that the power plant has shut down after an explosive release of energy. Veit thinks that the Void Lord met his demise during the power plant meltdown, and thinks that they are lucky. Leo then returns to the surface with Celia, and they regroup with the rest of Platoon 18. Later, we see Leo lying in bed due to sore muscles, and thinks that it must be the after effect of using the demon sword. He realizes that his human body couldn't handle the stress, and now he's completely out of mana. Just then, Celia brings him a sandwich, and also gives him a medal made by the kids. Celia then mentions that using her holy sword consumed a lot of blood, and asks Leo if she can drink his blood. He allows her to do it, and she starts sucking on his finger. The other girls barge into the room at this moment, and wonder about the plot development happening between them. Elphine mentions that all such activities are against the dorm rules, and Celia states that she was only treating his wound. Meanwhile, somewhere else we see that the princess of the Imperial City is on her way to the Assault Garden. They departed after hearing the news of the stampede, so her guard asks if they should return as the stampede is over. The princess mentions that she would like to show her appreciation to the holy swordsman who defended the assault garden, and they continue on their course. Afterwards, we see that the city has suffered greatly due to the void attack, but restoration efforts are already underway. Since the power plant was damaged, humans are implementing devices to convert the sun's rays into mana. Leo thinks that he has officially claimed this land as his kingdom, but there are still things that he doesn't understand, so he plans to do some research, and heads to the vault. However, a spirit denies him access, and mentions that the access must be authorized by the Administration Bureau. Leo wonders how a spirit managed to survive until now, and the spirit tells him to put in a request with the Bureau for entry into the vault. Just then, Regina arrives, and teases him by rubbing her huge assets against his back. She came there to return some video software, and told him that he won't find any porn there, so he should just leave. Leo mentions that he's doing some research which would help him get his memory back, and Regina decides to help him. She asks the spirit to let her in, and although it was about to reject her access, suddenly it allows her the access. Leo is surprised how Regina managed to get access, and she asks him to keep this a secret. He wonders if she's a spirit medium, but she informs him that the spirits are produced by the Phillet Foundation, and Leo is shocked to learn that even the spirits are produced artificially. Leo asks if there are still any real spirits left, and Regina informs him that they were mostly gone when the Void invasion started, but there may be some lurking around in the old forest. Just then, they receive an invite from the Administration Bureau to attend the commendation ceremony hosted by the 4th Imperial Princess. Leo then decides to head to the harbor after finishing his research, and asks Regina to feel free to go without him. However, Regina mentions that she won't be attending the ceremony and walks away. The scene then cuts to some beastmen discussing a plan to kidnap the 4th princess, so that they can free their captured people in return, but they wonder if they can hold against the humans who possess holy swords. Just then, a dark elf, Sharnak, appears offering assistance, and brings out the demon sword. She points the sword to the black lion, Bastia, which increases his power. He tests his strength, and cuts down a tree effortlessly with his sword. The other beastmen wonders if he used a holy sword, but Sharnak mentions that it's the power of the demon sword which was granted by the goddess. She suggests that they also hijack the ship along the process, and the other beastmen also agree to this plan. She asks them to capture the holy swordsman alive, so that they can be used as sacrifice for the goddess. After that, we see Leo, who is amazed to see the ship called Hyperion, and thinks about procuring a few ships like that in the future. He explores the market around the harbor, and looks for a gift. He sees a bracelet made by an elf, and Leo learns from the shop owner that elves live in the demi-human ward, along with werewolves, lions, and other demi-humans. The scene then cuts to the princess, named Alteria Rey Altriez, making a public appearance, and Regina is observing her from far away. After that, we see that Leo meets Celia and the others. He gives Celia a keychain as a gift, which he had bought for her, and Celia is moved by his gesture, but thinks that if he continues to impress girls like this, he will become a demon lord in bed. Leo is shocked when he hears demon lord, but realizes that she was just joking, and his identity remains secret. They decide to board the Hyperion, and Leo wonders why Regina isn't joining them, to which Celia mentions that she has her own set of circumstances. A girl named Fenris arrives, and asks what Celia is doing there. She mentions that her platoon has been invited to the ceremony, and Fenris tells her that she's here on behalf of the President of the Executive Council. They start to engage in an argument, but Elphine stops them, and Fenris leaves after congratulating Celia for awakening her holy sword. Meanwhile, we see the beastmen killing 2 guards, and one of the beastmen uses his ability to cut off their faces and assume the identity of the guards. After that, we see everyone enjoying the party, and Sakuya is stealing food to bring back to Blackus. We then see Leo, who was able to obtain a copy of past events, and thinks that someone is trying to cover up the historical past, as there is no mention of the gods, 6 heroes, or the 8 demon lords. As he enjoys his beverage, Sherry appears, and reports to him that the ship is powered by mana crystal. Its defenses are similar to a salt garden, and have flying weapons. As she's about to leave, he mentions that he has a present for her, and she gets excited. However, he hands her a donut, and Sherry is disappointed. Just then, Celia appears in a bikini, with Tess and another kid from the restaurant. Tess invites him to swim with them, so that she can develop a plot with him, but he rejects the offer, making excuses, and mentions that he doesn't have a swimsuit. They realize that he can't swim, but Celia mentions that she will teach him, and she has come prepared. Later, we see Leo being taught swimming by Celia, but he's getting distracted by her giant assets. He sees Tess and the other girls swimming like a pro, and he can't believe that he's being outdone by children's. Later, we see that the beast men in disguise kill the princess guards, and they kidnap her. She asks the spirit in her hand to run away, and Sharnak appears, mentioning that the princess is brave to let the master key run away. Meanwhile, in the party hall, other beast men kill the guards, and make all the guests hostage. Fenris tries to use her holy sword, but one of the beast men, named Jacked, throws a bomb apple which will detonate if they try to use their holy sword. They tie down all the guests, and the holy swordsman. One of the beast men mentions about sacrificing them to the goddess, which catches Leo's attention. Leo then tells Celia that he's going to check on the princess, and disappears. We then see that princess is forced to activate the ship's engine, and she asks them to keep their promise of not harming the people. As she tries to set the course for the capital, she notices that they are heading to a void reef which will kill everyone, and Shanrak mentions this will be the perfect sacrifice for goddess. Bastia tries to stop her, but she sets him on fire and kills him. Meanwhile, we see Regina near the ship, where a guard wonders why the ship is trying to move as it's scheduled to leave tomorrow. Just then, the spirit of the princess contacts Regina, and she recognizes it as the property of royal family. She hears the recorded message from the princess for help, and boards the ship before it leaves. After that, we see that Leo has lost his way, and he runs into Regina, who mentions that her little sister is in danger. Regina then tells him about the secret of her birth, and mentions that she was born under a red star called Scarlet Calamity. This star is considered a bad omen, and the children of the royal family must not be born when that star is visible. She was born as the 4th princess, but due to the bad omen, the king sentenced her to death. However, one of the duke's sons, named Edward, brought her back to his house, and as per the official story, she was buried in the forest. Edward and his wife had just been blessed with a child of their own, and they welcomed Regina into their family. As she grew, she became the personal maid to the biological daughter to conceal her identity, and only her platoon mates knew the truth. She was there today to see her little sister from afar, but found this little spirit. She mentions that this is a source spirit through which one can control the ship, but since the ship is moving, it must mean that something happened to the princess. Leo informs Regina that princess is taken by the demi-humans, and they have also taken control of the banquet hall. He mentions that Celia and the others are handling this, so they can focus on rescuing the princess. He suspects that the ringleader is on the bridge, and they let the spirit lead the way. Meanwhile, in the banquet hall, the holy swordsmen are still tied up, and they can't use their holy swords due to the apple bomb. Elphine tells Celia that she has analyzed the bomb with the help of her drones which she deployed before the party started. She tells Celia that the wand in the hand of Jacked sends a signal that triggers detonation. She mentions that she can only delay 1 second with her drone jammer, and Celia prepares herself for the attack. She finds a fruit fork lying on the ground, and thinks that she can use the power of her vampire blood. Meanwhile, Regina reaches the control room with Leo, but there is no one there, and an artificial element is being used to control the ship. Regina then reaches out to her sister Alteria, using the spirit, and when Alteria asks about her identity, she disguises herself as a spirit medium. Alteria informs them that she's heading towards the flight deck, but they should prioritize the safety of the ship as it's heading to a void reef. She tells Regina to take control of the ship using the spirit monitoring system in the lowermost deck, and gives her the access code. Leo asks Regina to head down to the deck, while he will go and save the princess. Meanwhile, in the banquet hall, Fenris asks the beastmen to allow children to escape, and Gerda threatens to kill her. Just then, they hear a sound of a breaking plate which was dropped by Tsukai, and Gerda wonders how she broke free. Gerda tries to go after her, but Elsa notices that she is a warrior from Auron. Fenris provokes him again, and he tries to attack her, but she manages to pin him down. Celia then signals Elphine, and she jammed the signal of Jack's wand with her orb. Just then, the thread made from Celia's blood cuts down the wand, and Tsukai knocks down Elsa. Fenris activates her holy sword, and attacks Gerda. Celia uses her holy sword to subdue Jack, and the bomb apple disappears. After that, Celia tries to contact Leo, but she can't reach him. Just then, Tess notices something outside, and they realize that they are heading to a void reef. The voids enter the ship, and they engage in a battle with the holy swordsman. Suddenly, Celia hears Leo's voice through the keychain which surprises her, and he asks her to support Regina who is on her way to the lower deck. We then see a few voids attacking Regina while she is heading to the lower deck, and she gets surrounded. Celia saves her, and we see that the holy swordsmen are still fighting the voids in the banquet hall. Just then, a Brain Eater class appears, and Fenris tries to attack it with her ability, but it doesn't seem to work on it. Tsukai mentions that she will take care of it, and asks them to head inside and protect the civilians. Tsukai then calls upon her demon sword, Yamikidori, and prepares to fight. Meanwhile, Celia and Regina make their way to the lower deck while defeating the voids, and Regina manages to take control of the ship. It's revealed that the access code of the ship is Scarlet Calamity, and she then turns the ship around. Meanwhile, Sharnak is trying to take off, leaving the leopard beastmen behind, who gets killed by the voids. Alteria notices that the ship is changing its course, and thinks that the spirit medium must have succeeded. Just then, Sharnak notices that they are unable to take off, and we see that Leo is stopping them from flying using his shadow hands. He takes out the void around the helicopter, and mentions that she will be punished for terrorizing his kingdom. Back in the banquet hall, we see the holy swordsmen along with civilians are surrounded by many voids, but just then Sherry secretly takes them all out, and we also see that Tsukai has managed to defeat the Brain Eater void. Leo then confronts Sharnak, who attacks him with a powerful spell, but Leo easily deflects it away. She is shocked as this spell belongs to the legendary Demon Lord, and Leo mentions that it's his spell, so it won't work on him. Leo then binds her with his shadow hands, and she reveals that she wanted to corrupt the holy swordsman, and offer them to the goddess. As she's about to mention the goddess's name, she gets killed by a demon sword that comes out of her, and the princess faints seeing this. The demon swords transform into a void lord, and Leo tries to attack it, but his attack doesn't seem to have any effect. The void lord teleports, and tries to attack Leo, but he dodges it. Few other voids try to attack the princess, but just then Regina sees the situation through the security cam, and uses the ship's defense to attack the void. She also launches missiles to attack the voids, and Celia appears from one of the missiles. Leo asks her to buy him some time, and she starts attacking the void. Leo then summons his demon sword, Dainsleif, and finishes off the Void Lord with his special move. Later, we see Alteria thanking the Holy Swordsmen for their display of courage, and inquires about Leo and the Spirit Medium. They tell him that Leo is resting, and the Spirit Medium can't join due to some personal circumstances, but she wishes the princess a bright and joyous future. We then see Leo in bed, who has sore muscles due to his human body, and reflects that he wasn't able to get any info on the goddess. Just then, Regina arrives, and brings him an apple pie, but Leo is only interested in Celia's pie. Regina is glad that she got to speak to her sister because of him, and gives him a kiss. Leo wonders if she's teasing him, but she mentions that she's only thanking him, and asks him to keep this a secret from Celia. Afterwards, we see that the Beastman's place is being raided by the officials, and they are being captured for the conspiracy against kidnapping the princess. Just then, they hear a mysterious voice, and a magic circle appears before them, which turns them into stone. The person introduces himself as the Demon Lord, Zalvadis, and demonstrates his power by using his magic to put everyone on their knees. He offers them to join them, and they decide to join him. He names them Demon Wolves, and creates an underground labyrinth which will be invisible to humans. He asks them to use it as a temporary headquarters, and improve their skills, so that they can fight against the Empire. Just then, he receives a call from Celia, and it's revealed that the person is Leo. He immediately cuts the call, and heads back. We then see Celia, who sees the increased number of crows in their platoon dorm, and recalls Leo's warning about the animals in Darkness Domain being attracted to vampires. She goes to check up on Leo, and runs into Sherry, but she immediately disappears. Celia decides to take a shower, and meanwhile Leo appears back in his room. He thinks that he managed to recruit the demi-humans, and it's another step towards rebuilding his demonic army. As he enters the living room, he encounters Celia, who is getting dressed, and at that moment, Regina appears, leading to a misunderstanding. However, they quickly clarify that it's not what she thought. After that they have lunch, where Celia advises Leo to have more vegetables, and he wonders if she's feeding him vegetables to dilute his blood, so that it's easier for her to suck on him. Regina then notices the crows, and mentions that the whole academy thinks that their dorm is haunted. She mentions that a huge black dog, and a ghost girl shows up sometimes. Celia tells her that she saw the ghost girl today who was in a maid's outfit, and she was sweeping in Leo's room. Leo is surprised, as he knows it's Sherry, and thinks that she should be more careful. Celia then asks him where he went this morning, and he mentions that he went to do a solo training for today's match. We then learn that they have a match today with Fenris's platoon, and they hope to rank up by winning the match. The scene then cuts to Celia and Leo in the match field. They evade an attack, and manage to strike down a flag. The goal of the match is to destroy all the opponent's flag, and the team to accomplish this task first would win the match. Elphine then detects someone trying to attack their flag, and Regina uses her holy sword to make them retreat. Meanwhile, Sakuya is pushing through the middle, escaping the wolves of Fenris. Celia also encounters the wolves, and one of them manages to injure her leg. Just then, Fenris appears, and mentions that if Celia is defeated here, they would easily win. Fenris then uses the wolves to create armor, and attack Celia. They engage in a battle, and Celia finds herself pinned down against a tree. Meanwhile, Fenris's subordinate attacks Leo, but he easily deflects her attack and takes her down. Celia then powers up, breaking free from the restraints. She launches an attack on Fenris, and shatters her armor. Fenris is defeated, and they become the winners of the match. Later, Leo is having a shower with Celia, and he wonders if it's fine for him to take a shower in the girls' bath. Celia mentions that children under the age of 11 can bathe with their guardians regardless of gender. Although he joins them, he's still too embarrassed, and faces the other way around. They reflect on today's match, and resolve to improve further. After that, we see a Void Lord named Nephikes, who is putting some demon swords into a mana crystal, and wonders who defeated Sharnak. He mentions that the time of awakening of the goddess has arrived, and we see another assault garden appearing from the Void Reef. Later, we see Diglis informing the 18th platoon members about receiving footage of a third assault garden which disappeared 6 years ago, and Leo recalls that it's the hometown of Celia and Regina. Diglis mentions that it's heading towards them, and it will reach in 7 days. They also received a distress signal, which is strange, so she wants them to do a sweep of the city for survivors, and shut down the power plant. Elphine thinks that they were tasked with this mission because Celia was a member of Duke's family, and Leo thinks that the humans want a hero to show them to their people. As they prepare for the departure, Leo informs Blackus and Sherry that he spotted the Sacred Order's insignia among the ruins, and he wants to find out the person responsible for this. He asks Blackus to protect the city, and asks Sherry to join him. Blackus tells him that he will watch over the city, and Leo wonders what's around his neck. Blackus mentions that it was a gift from Tsukai, so that he's not mistaken as a stray dog, and Leo is surprised that Blackus would wear something like that. The team then takes off, and Elphine asks them to take some rest until they reach there. Regina offers Leo her lap for a nap, and Celia suggests that he should use her lap instead. Regina then brings out an ear pick, and drags him down to his lap. She starts cleaning his ears, and he is amazed by the pleasant sensation. He recalls his past, where the goddess mentions that she's going to disappear soon, and she'll be reincarnated 1,000 years in the future. She asks if he will come looking for her then, and he mentions that he will search every corner of the world and won't rest until he finds her. Back in present, Leo wakes up in Celia's lap, who tells him that she switched lap with Regina. They reach the third assault garden, and Celia and Leo plan to investigate the power plant. The other girls will look for the distress signal, and Leo asks Sherry to protect them secretly. As Leo and Celia are walking around, Celia's radar picks up void activity, and they get attacked by the void. Celia gets trapped in the rumble, and a giant void appears above them. This is where the video ends. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next part.